Mixing. Right. I started mixing back in 1983. I was doing a record with Mike Oldfield called Crises, and he actually had a Neve 8108. That was the first Neve with digital routing. Um, and the automation was NECAM 2. This was all stored on large 7-inch floppy disks. Um, and actually, the only part of the console that was automated was fader level and mute. That was it. Um, if you wanted to, we only had a 24-track machine, so that meant that you had to mix different instruments on a track. If you have a 20-minute track, there might be a track, let's say track 17, which for the first part of the song might be strings left, track 18, strings right. But later on, it might be a vocal track because we needed extra vocals. So that means that while it's strings left, it probably will be panned left. But once it becomes a vocal, it may want to be in the center. How do you do that? You don't have a pan automation. So the way to do that is to parallel two channels. The same signal, which you could do in the patch bay. And for the first part of the mix, you have the second channel muted. The first channel is unmuted and panned left. And when the time comes where that string machine finishes and the vocal's about to start, you mute the main channel, you unmute the parallel channel, and that's already set to center. So these are the kind of workarounds you used to have to do with very early automation. But it was a great training ground. Later on, I moved on to mixing on an SSL. Those, again, were basically mutes and fader. We used to have VCAs on those, so you could use groups, which was pretty handy. Later on, I was very lucky to work on basically the first console that had pretty much everything was automated. EQ, auxiliary sends. That was called the Harrison Series 10. And Mike Oldfield and I mixed an album called Islands on this console. Now, in those days, again, we were saving to these big 7-inch discs. Even just to press save on a big mix, that would, after a few hours of working, that would start taking 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So we'd have to make sure that, 4 hands on the console, do as many things as you could, and then if you liked it, hit save, and then go and make a cup of tea. Or what we did was actually play Kniffle. So nowadays, we have Pro Tools and all sorts of different wonderful DAWs available. Everything is saved. Every piece of automation you could imagine can be saved. You can recall a mix in just a minute, 2 minutes, and it's up and ready to go. In the back in the 80s and the 90s, to recall an analog mix, a complex mix with a lot of outboard gear and a lot of patching to do, that could take most of the day just to recall that mix. And is it the same? Probably not. We used to use all sorts of different outboard gear, pan scan, flanger. Well, every time you printed the mix, the pan scan might be in a different place. The flanger might be in a different place. This is all stuff that the analog world, it doesn't do very well. The digital world does it very well. So it's really moved on a lot. I've done a lot of mixing on analog desks. I've then moved into the world of DAW and mixing in the box. And now what I do is kind of a hybrid. I actually use this old Neve over here to sum. I can use up to 8 stereo groups coming out of Pro Tools and summing in the analog world and then back into Pro Tools to record the mix. So it all has its benefits. Is it better? Is it worse? It's not really a question of that. It just depends what works best for the mix that you're doing at the time. So what I'm doing here, especially today with all the processing gear from elysia, we're essentially doing most of the mixing in the box, but we're summing out into the Neve and then back into Pro Tools to record, and we're using inserts to come out of the box into the analog processing, and then back in to Pro Tools, and then out summing for our final mix. So now we're going to mix one of the new protocol songs. This is a tune called Catalyst, and this features Andy Timmons on guitar, Steve Weingart on keyboards, Ernest Tibbs on bass. Now, essentially, this recording is a live recording. We played all the music live, one pass. So I've chosen a sample rate of 96 kilohertz, 32-bit in Pro Tools to record, because with live recording, you don't have tons of overdubs, so the session size remains a manageable size. If the session size gets too big, then it's just crazy to archive, to back up, and it gets a bit silly, I think. So this is a 96K session, and we are essentially doing a remix using the elysia outboard gear. All right, so to explain what we're doing to the instruments here, I've inserted onto the bass. We have an Empressor. This is the bass DI, Empressor, and then the Muse EQ. On the bass cabinet, I also have the other side of the Empressor and the other side of the Muse EQ. On the guitar, I've got it coming into, again, the stereo sum of all his parts. We have the Expressor, and then coming into the X filter. On the Rhodes, because the Rhodes plays quite a major part in this mix, we have it going through the Expressor, then we have it going through the X filter, and then finally a little bit of envelope, just to get it to really bite. The keys, again, a mix of all the different keys, just coming through this stereo compressor here, the Expressor 500. And then the kit, which is already pre-mixed anyway, is just going to come through this envelope just for a little bit of extra transients there. And then the whole mix will be summed into the alpha for the final mix. And I'm going to show you the difference between the flat signal and then the process signal. So we've picked a little part of the mix here, and the first part will be flat, second part will be processed. Okay, now let's go keyboards. Okay, now the guitars. And now the complete mix.